Hey, I'm going to do a walkthrough of how I got this mouse tracking animation set up in Rive and then implemented into my Webflow portfolio website. There's a lot to cover in how this was done, and I am by no means an expert. I'm still a relative beginner to Rive, but I've kind of gone deep in learning the techniques and was pretty excited to figure this out, so I wanted to share how I did it. So let's flip over to the screen. This is my portfolio website where I have this mouse tracking animation set up. As you can see, the image follows the pointer. And I've also got a little hover effect that happens. This is all created using Rive and implemented into Webflow. I've got one other Rive animation on the site right now. It's this footer animation. When you hover over the Great Lakes, this little Milwaukee flag pops up and waves. This is the power of Rive, is that you can create these interactive animations, and there are ways to blend them seamlessly together. So I'm going to go over how I created this. Like I said, it may not cover every detail, but I'll talk about what I can. So in the Rive editor, this is what you see. This is the file that I set up. I made a copy of it so I can kind of pick it apart for this demo. But what you'll see is the base version of that animation, and I've got all my different parts and pieces here. This is a self-portrait that I originally created in Procreate on the iPad. It was a layered illustration, so I had the character separated from the background, and I had some foreground kind of noise there as well. So I was able to actually kind of offset those within the hovering and the movement as well. So you can kind of see some of these little color shapes moving around, and then the background moving in the opposite direction too, to give a little bit of a parallax effect. So that's one thing that's really helpful to do. You can import assets like PSDs, and in this version, there's a little preview up here. You can see that I actually cut the eyes out so that I could create those in Rive and have those move on their own as well. And one thing that's nice too is you can change the compression. So change it to WebP, which is going to be a much smaller version for website, which is really nice. In the file itself, I've got the clip path set up, and that's something I've got set to animate and also rotate. And that's two separate animations that are blending together to make that happen. I was really excited to figure that out because it was something I wanted to do, but I didn't want to key every single frame of it rotating around. So I figured out a shortcut for that. And then I've got my PSD of the face itself. Inside of it, there's the noise. That's the front noise. So if I move that around a little bit, you can kind of see that. That's set to move opposite to something with constraints. So you'll see that gets a little strange there. And whenever this glitches out, just the eyeballs show up, which looks pretty creepy. Here's what really makes the 3D effect work with this 2D image is this mesh here. So if I click on the head layer and do edit mesh, you can see that I've added all of these points around the face and weighted them to these bones, these different colored bones here, to control how they move. So I'll get into that in just a moment. I've got, like I said, I've got each eye separated here as well. So each eye has the eyeball, the outer circle, the iris, the pupil, and the white highlight as well. And what else? The body is separate so that the head can move independent of the body. Otherwise, I was getting some warping around the neck and things like that. So that was important to separate from the neck and shoulders of the portrait. And then the background texture, I think there's just two layers in there. Those are grouped together so they can move together. And then what is this background? Oh, just the background solid color. So yeah, 2 layers of background texture and 1 layer of just the background color. And then down here, I've got this face control group. This is where all my bones are. So that's what these shapes are. These bones are what I'm using to actually control the animation and apply weighting to the portrait itself. So there are bones for different parts of the face. I created these bones for the eyelids, eyelid top and bottom, in order to allow me to do a blinking effect. So this is the eyelid for top right. So if I move this down, you'll see, I have some control over that eyelid there. Undo that. And then the main bone is really this one that's called front face bone. This is the one that when I move, it's going to really control the head itself. And you can kind of see some other things are offset with it to either move at different speeds or, as you can see in the case of this one here, it kind of moves an opposite to it. So just kind of leave things where they are. Back face bone, that's this one. So this one is actually set to move opposite to the front face bone. And that's just so that I can control the ears a little bit differently. When you turn a head, the ears should kind of move opposite to the rest of the facial features so that it gives that 3D looking effect. And I have this stationary bone here. This allowed me to do different weighting on the face itself. And then, yeah, the 4 eyelid bones. So that's how I've got my file set up in design mode. In Rive, you've got design mode and animate mode. You want to get a lot of stuff set up in design mode first. And one of the pro tips I've learned from watching a lot of Rive YouTube videos is to put everything into a root group. So everything I have is collected in one group here. And that's really helpful if you need to do overall resizing or moving things around for everything. So I'm going to switch this view over to animate mode, and you'll kind of see how a lot of the animation pieces work. So one of the main things that's really powerful about Rive is these state machines. So I have this main state machine here called look around, and I'll get to these inputs in a second here, but what I've got is then a bunch of different timeline animations. So I'll click through each one and look at what they are. And I've also got layers set up within my main state machine. So this state machine controls the interaction between these different animations and states based on certain inputs and things like that. And that's how the mouse tracking works, as well as the blending of multiple animations. So this first one is left to right. So this is going to use what's called a blend state to blend between my left animation and my right animation. So that makes the head turn side to side. Second one is up to down. That's the same thing, blending from down to up using different values. I've got one called blob morph. We'll look at the animation for this one, but that one just controls how the blob points move, and then a separate one for the blob rotate. And those two things blend together to create that full effect. And then an additional one for blink. So each of these, they all play simultaneously when you start this to get this effect. And in this case, I don't have the mouse tracking set up here because it's using these access values, and that's what makes it work in the code on the website. So if I change these values between 0 and 100, you can see the head moving around. So I'll stop that and just look at these different animations. So let me start with the left and right and up and down, because that's what makes the head tracking work. So on these, I'm just setting one key for this front face bone. So like I said, that front face bone is what makes everything move. So with that one, I'm just keying the Y position to this upward look. And I think with this one, what I did was, I made sure to put it at a point where, if you go too far with this, things get really warped and messed up looking. So I set it at a point where it seemed like, yep, that looks like it's looking up about as much as I want it to without it getting warped. So I'm going to undo that change there. And then that's the entire animation. It's just one keyframe, and that's all it needs to be for this. It's going to be the same with down. Found a spot where it looked like it was looking down about as far as it could go without getting warped. Same with right. Although this is kind of back to more of a neutral in terms of up and down, and now it's just keying the left and right view. So it's only keying the X value on this one, and then same with the left. Only going to key the X value here. So those are the kind of the 4 extremes of the directions. And then as you saw, when I changed these values, I hit play and change these values, 50-50 is kind of right in the middle. So then from there, it's going to blend between these two different states. And this might actually, yeah, I think if I change this value, if you watch this line over here, you can see how it's blending between the left and right animations, which which is just, again, a super cool, powerful feature of Rive. In addition to those, I've got an idle. I think I actually have this set up. I deleted my my shimmy version in this. So that's on this one, when you hover, it does this little, head wiggle thing. In this version, I deleted that. So this this artboard doesn't really do anything, but you can kind of see here, it's just a timeline where I'm keying that wiggle kind of animation. But what I do have set up in this one is the blink. This is a looping animation. It's 3 seconds long, and the blink happens at the beginning. And so that means every 3 seconds it blinks. So you can kind of see there. You can actually see the bones move there just briefly when the blink happens. So that's what is controlling it. It looks a little weird if you stop it and look up close, but it happens really quickly. So I let it go. I might adjust that just a little bit, but that's how the blink works. Again, that is it's on its own layer in the state machine here. So that just plays continuously throughout this. So the character continues blinking while everything else is happening. I've got the blob morph. This maybe is one of my most complicated animations within this whole thing. You can see if I expand here, I'm actually animating each vertex of this shape. Let's see if I can actually show it here. So in this animation, you can see this is just the blob kind of moving in and out. And this is a great trick I learned from the team at Rive. I've got a work area set up here, so it's only looping in between, 1 minute here and 1 minute and 40 frames, or sorry, 1 second and 1 second and 40 frames. So, but I've got these extra keys outside of here so that the looping is continuous, and you can see how I've got them offset from each other, so it doesn't look like it's all collapsing in and expanding out at the same time. They're kind of offset in this way. So again, that's just the blob morphing itself, and then the blob rotate is a separate animation. This is also a loop, and this is just rotating this group, the clip path group. So yeah, here, this is really all it is, just kind of like rotating around. And I think these are all set to kind of, linear motion, so that it's a continuous rotation. Blob morph, I don't know, I think these might be, I don't remember how I between these, but these might just be, I guess I didn't really set up interpolation on those. But it still works. They might be linear as well, actually. I think they are. So that's the on the path itself. Oh yeah, there's the path. So you can see them moving. And then if I were to click into this path and edit the vertices, you can see the vertices themselves. So actually, if I play the animation here, yeah, you can see I'm actually animating each vertex. And then actually, I think each vertex also has the positions for rotation and the length of the handles as well. So those can also be animated. So like I said, this is actually much easier to animate this in a stationary way and then rotate it with the state machine so that both of those are playing together. So if you look here, you can see blob morph is continuously looping and blob rotate is also continuously looping. And you can see the blob rotate is actually a much longer and slower animation, which is nice. Then they don't have to have the timing match up exactly. They're going to continue doing their thing. And I'm not going to get like a glitch or a jump at the end of the animation. They're both going to run smoothly. And then here you can see the blink doing the same thing every 3 seconds. It's going to start over and blink, and it'll, the rest of the timeline is just kind of holding for that blink. So that's how I have this set up. The layers are really powerful because like I said, you can set up multiple things to happen. And then these inputs here are what are controlling my blend state here. So you can add different kinds of inputs. This is a number input. You can also do a Boolean, so true or false, and then a trigger where it'll just fire something that, whatever you set it to. So with these three, you can do some pretty powerful stuff. And these numbers are set to just go from 0 to 100 because that is how the code is going to look for it. So I'll turn that off, and Let me look really quickly at the mesh and how I have the bones weighted here, because that was something that took me a little while to figure out, but was really, really powerful and what makes the sort of 3D effect work. So if I go into edit the mesh again and view all the vertices, you can actually switch this into a weight view, and this gives you this view. So the colors of the vertices correspond to the different colors of the bones, which I have named over here, which is a very helpful thing to do if you're working with a lot of bones. So the front face bone is everything that's weighted with blue, or this bluish purple kind of color. You can see, so this one, it's 100% weighted to the front face bone. But some of these ones towards the outside are going to be more like 50-50. So those are going to move less when I move the bone itself. So that's why it doesn't just, the whole image doesn't move side to side. It actually looks like it's rotating because they have different weights attached to them. And you can see all the vertices around the eye have weighted to the proper eyelid. So eyelid right top is here. And then these ones in the corners, I've got 50-50 between the top and the bottom. So they're not gonna move as dramatically. What else? It looks like in the end, I didn't use the back face bone. I just used the stationary bone, which is nice. So the front face bone is one that's going to move, and then the stationary bone is just going to stay still, and it's just hanging out over here. It doesn't really matter where it is, but that allows me to, only give 50% weight to some of these vertices. So like I said, it's starting with 100 in the middle. This area goes to 95, down to 90 here, 90 here. I kind of want to keep the eye. I don't want to smash it too much while it's rotating around. 90 here, and then over here I get down to 70, and then around the ears it's more like 50, and then down to, I messed with these values a lot to get it to work. So that's how that works. I did, I added all these vertices with the pen tool, so you can come in and add a vertex to it, and it'll figure out where it should be. You can also move them around once you've got them set. If you use the pen tool, it's just going to move the vertex. If you use the main select tool, it's going to actually deform your mesh, which I didn't want to do in this case, but could be useful for some effects. And this works when you upload any bitmap image to Rive. So again, super cool, super powerful tools. I think that's what I'm going to cover here. Maybe the other important part is the constraints for this. So like I said, I have some of these offset to each other. So I have the front face bone is the main one that is controlling the movement of things. But on these, these eyelids, if I didn't, because it's a separate bone and I had the eyelids weighted, 100% to these eyelid bones, if I didn't have them moving with the front face bone, they would stay where they are while the face is moving, and it would look super weird. So you can add a constraint to it. And what this does is I added what's called a translation constraint. There are multiple options: transform distance, translation scale, rotation, and IK, which is really helpful for character bones. But in this case, it's the translation constraint, and you can set a target for that. So it's targeting the front face bone. So this basically means it's going to move with the front face bone at a strength of 90%. And in this case, I set it to 90% because the vertices around the eye were weighted at 90%. So if I were to click into this one, you'll see it has 90% weight to the front face bone. So basically I'm matching that weighting for these eyelid bones, or the eyelid vertices, by using a constraint on the bones themselves. Yeah, hopefully that's not too confusing. Like I said, I'm kind of in deep with this. And then I have I didn't end up using this back face bone for anything, I don't think, but this is actually set also with a translation, but with a negative value. So that's how you can see it moves opposite to the front face bone. Not 100% opposite to it, but just 20%. So it's, it's moving to a lesser degree, but also in the opposite direction, which was really helpful. And I think the eyes themselves, I have a translation constraint to also to the front face bone, but you can see they're moving at 105%. So they're actually moving a little bit more. And that's what actually gives the effect of the eye looking around as it tracks, so that it's the eyes are moving within the character as well. So that's what is making that happen, is that 105% strength there. All right, I think that's everything I'm going to cover for the Rive file itself. I'm going to jump into Webflow and talk about how I got this set up. Okay, so here I am in Webflow. You can see this is where I have the embed for this animation. One of the other things you have to do is add a script to the head tag, and you can find this on Rive's support documents. This just basically allows the Rive file to play. So I'll close that. And then if we look at the embed code itself here, you have to create a canvas element and set the dimensions to it. I also set the dimensions in a CSS style inline property here, because I found out that if you don't set it with a CSS, it'll actually display at double the size on high resolution screens. And so this keeps it at the correct size. So I'm using both here. This is the actual code here, and I'll find a way to share this within the description of the video. I did not write this code. This was given to me by Zach on the Rive team, which was super helpful. I asked a question in the help channel on their Discord, and he really helped me figure this out and do some troubleshooting to get it working. So I'll try to explain it here. I'm not a JavaScript coder, but I have enough knowledge to figure out what to edit here. So you do have to host your Rive file. So once you are finished with it, you can come over here to the share icon and then download it. So you just want to do download for newest runtime. That will save a .riv file. You can also, if you don't want to do anything complex with it, you can do a really easy share link. Choose what you want it to link to. When you generate the link, you can actually get an iframe embed code, which is super easy to implement into Webflow. And in fact, that is how I did the footer graphic here. And you can see it's actually even playing within the editor. The interaction doesn't work in the editor, but it does work in preview mode, which is really cool. So if you're not doing something that works outside of the canvas, that's the best option. It's super easy to just embed that right away there. But with this one, this is a little bit more complex. So once you save the file, you have to host it somewhere. I'm using UploadCare. This was recommended when I asked on Twitter, and it's working really well. I'm using a free version, and I can just upload the file and then link to it. So that's how I'm hosting the Rive file. You can't upload it directly to Webflow, unfortunately, but this is working really well. A lot of this just needs to be here. You need to choose which artboard you're using, so you can have multiple artboards in your file. This one, like I said, I changed the name of this one. I added demo to it, but that's your artboard file name. You also need to know the name of your state machine. So this one's called Look Around. And you'll see, actually, we also need to find a place where we're calling out the x-axis and y-axis. These are values that I named this so that they would line up with the code. So when you first put in a number value, it's just called number, but you can change it. So that's where I changed these, because the title you give it matters for how you're going to call it out in the code. So you can make it x-axis, for example. I will delete that so I don't get confused. So here I'm calling out the artboard home animation. Here the state machine is called Look Around. That's where that's being called out. We also need to include the state machine here. So it's going to get the state machine. And then it's going to find, so here's the x-axis value. Here's the y-axis. And then this is where it does the math, basically to figure out the size of your viewport. So window.innerWidth and window.innerHeight. And then, oh, here's the math actually to figure out where it should move within the viewport. Like I said, I'll paste a link to this somewhere so you can look at it more closely and copy and paste it to edit as you would like as well. Just know you need to edit your artboard and state machine names as well as your inputs if you're setting this up. And this I set up, like I said, I set up my values here on these blend states to work between 0 and 100 because that's how Zach had his file set up. And so I knew that it would work if I set my values between 0 and 100. That's what this math is. That's how that's making that work. So once you close it, you can, you won't be able to preview this one within your editor, even in preview mode. It's just not going to show up. But once it's published and live, it'll be there and it'll work. So I hope that was helpful. There's a lot of powerful things that Rive can do. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions and if you want to see anything else. And hopefully this was helpful to someone. Thanks.